Hello everyone, welcome to our subject Science, Technology, and Society. I will discuss about the first chapter of this subject, which is the general concepts and the historical event. So let's start from the scientific revolution. So it is explained that science is as old as the world itself, that there is no individual that can explain where and when science began. From the genesis of time, science has existed. It is always interwoven with the society. So, how can science be defined? There are 4 definitions of science explained. So the first one, it defined as science as an idea. So it explained that it includes all the ideas of people, the theories of people, or any theories that included, and all available systematic observations and explanations about the natural and the physical world. The second one, it is defined as an intellectual activity. It encompasses systematic and practical study of the natural and the physical world. So this process of study involves systematic observation and experimentation. Third, it is defined or explained as a body of knowledge. So science is explained as a subject matter or described as a subject matter, a discipline, a field of study, or a body of knowledge that deals with the process of learning about the natural and the physical world. This is what we refer to as a school of science. And the last one, science is explained as a personal and social activity. It also explains that science is both knowledge and activities done by human beings to develop better understanding of the world around them. It means also to improve life and to survive in life. It is interwoven with people's lives. Human beings have embarked in scientific activities in order to know and understand everything around them. They have persistently observed and studied the natural and the physical world in order to find meanings and seek answers to many questions. They have developed noble ideas, or what we call today philosophies, and to provide alternative and possible answers to the certain phenomena. Humans also use religion to rationalize origin of life and all lifeless forms. So, as the scientific revolution or the idea of scientific revolution have claimed to be started in the early 16th up to the 80th century in Europe. Why in Europe? The possible answer is about the invention of the printing machine and the blooming intellectual activities done in various places of learning, and also the growing number of the scholars in the various fields of human interest. It is said also that scientific revolution was the period of Enlightenment when the development in the fields of mathematics, physics, astronomy, biology, and chemistry transformed the views of society about nature. So it explained the birth of the modern science came from the developments of the discipline mentioned before. The ideas generated during this period enabled the people to reflect, rethink, and re-examine their beliefs and their way of life. There is no doubt that it ignited the vast human interest to rethink how they do science and view scientific processes. Scientific revolution is very significant in the development of human being, the transformation of the society, and in the formulation of scientific experiments and observations. The scientific revolution also led to the creation of new research fields in science and prompted the establishment of a strong foundation of modern science. In many ways, scientific revolution transformed the natural world and the world of ideas. To further understand what exactly happens in the scientific revolution, it is important to examine the different individuals whose ideas have shaken and contested the dominant theories and ideas during this period, the truths of their time. Scientists in all periods of time are driven by their curiosity, critical thinking, and creativity to explore the physical and the natural world. Their love for science is driven by their deep passion to know and the passion to discover. Scientists are not driven by clamor for honor and publicity. They are ordinary people like us doing extraordinary things. Some scientists were never appreciated during their times. Some were sentenced to death, while the others were condemned by the church during their time. In spite of all the predicaments and challenges they experienced, they never stopped experimenting, theorizing, and discovering new knowledge and ideas. In this part of this lesson, three notable scientists are discussed. For sure, there were many scientists who worked before and after these individuals. However, it is important to note that these men, particularly through their ideas, has shaken the world. So these are the some individuals and their revolutionary ideas. So the first notable person or scientist in the scientific revolution era was Nicholas Copernicus. So it explained that Nicholas Copernicus is one of the Renaissance men, particularly in the field of science, that has a knowledge about the nature of the universe. He did nothing but the extensive observing of the heavenly bodies, yes, or inviting people to test his ideas. His ideas were an example of what is presently called as the thought experiment. Copernicus was a busy man. His duty as a canon and as a doctor affected his time to formally publish his work and advance his career in astronomy. The publication of his book or his work, which is on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres in 1543, is often cited as the start of the scientific revolution. In his book, he wanted a model of the universe in which everything moved around a single center at unvarying rates. Copernicus placed the sun to be the centerpiece of the universe. The Earth and all the planets are surrounding or orbiting the sun each year. The moon, however, would still be seen orbiting the Earth. Copernicus' model of the Earth orbiting around the sun automatically positioned the planets into logical sequence. Copernicus is also a courageous man. Although the Copernican model makes sense now, during those times it was judged by the heretic and therefore it was an unacceptable idea to be taught in the Catholics. The Catholic Church banned the Copernican model and was ignored by the Rome for the rest of the 16th century. The next notable scientist in the scientific revolution era we'll discuss is Charles Darwin. We all know that Charles Darwin is the famous behind the theory of evolution. He changed our concept of the world's creation and its evolution. Johnson described Darwin as a genius who came from a line of intellectually gifted and wealthy family. According again to Johnson, Darwin went to the best schools but was observed to be a mediocre student. He struggled in his study in medicine and ministry, which his father has imposed to him. Darwin published his book, The Origin of Species, in 1589. This book is considered to be one of the most important works of Darwin in scientific literature. Darwin collected many significant materials in order to present his theory with overwhelming evidences. Darwin's book presented and described how those species evolved over time and presented traits and adaptation that differentiate species. Like many other scholars, Darwin accumulated many pertinent materials and data that he could ever possibly need to substantiate his theory. Darwin's observational skills as a scientist were extraordinary that moved beyond the realms of plants and animals into the realms of humans. And also, his accomplishments were so diverse that it is useful to distinguish two fields to which he made major contributions. First one, the evolutionary biology and philosophy of science. More than these works, what made Darwin truly remarkable was his courage to challenge religious and unscientific ideas that are deemed to be prominent during those days. His unorthodox way of pursuing science gave more value to evidence-based science. Darwin provided a different framework for doing scientific activities. It is a science marked by observation and experiments. So, the last in the three notable scientists and has a contribution in the scientific revolution was Sigmund Freud. So he is the last one. We all know that Sigmund Freud is very famous or has a famous figure in the field of psychology. Rosenfels also described him as a towering literary figure and a very talented communicator who did this share to raise the consciousness of the civilized world in psychological matters. However, apart from this, Freud also made a significant contribution in the scientific world through the development of an important observational method to gather reliable data to study humans' inner life. This method is popularly known as the method of psychoanalysis. The scientific hypothesis he formulated formed in the essential fundamental version of this method. The human, or for Freud, this method of psychoanalysis is the scientific way to study the human mind and the neurotic illnesses. It is no doubt that amidst of all questions on his work that led to some sort of academic controversy, his method of psychoanalysis had a great impact on the scientific way of understanding human nature. We also know that Freud is not a traditional thinker. His method of psychoanalysis was proven to be effective in understanding some neurological conditions that were not understood by medicine at that time. His method was unorthodox, focusing on human sexuality and the evil nature of man. This posed immense challenges to scholars and ordinary citizens of his time. To some, they found his ideas not easy, especially in his explanations of the human sexuality. It explained that Freud was born in a much later period from the scientific revolution, but his contribution to knowledge can be seen in many aspects of the human scene, including art, literature, philosophy, politics, psychotherapy. Whether he is more of a psychologist or a scientist is for people to decide. The fact remains that Freudian ideas and theories are still considered nowadays as a great inspiration to examine human mind and behavior in a more specifically or scientifically accepted way. So that's all for our lesson for today. Our next lesson will be the cradles of early science, which there are some or still developments of science in some parts of the world that can be seen. Specifically, there are developments of science in Mesoamerica. There are still developments of science in Asia. And also there are development of science in Africa. So that will be our lesson for the next meeting. So thank you very much for listening to this class, and I hope you understand our lesson and you have the learnings that you wanted. Thank you very much.
For more ICCT College's video updates, please subscribe and click the notification button.